Hello and welcome back to the Cubase Fundamentals course. Just moved my camera above the monitors and it's completely freaking me out, so it's going to take me a while to get used to that. Today we're going to be talking about marker tracks, and if you enjoy this episode and you want to help support my channel, please have a look at the Patreon link below. That's the best way to do it, and you'll be able to download this project and follow along side by side. A couple of tiny bits of housekeeping before we get going. I need to deactivate solo. And I'm going to get rid of this grey group track. I don't usually let it hang around quite so long, so now's the time to get rid of it. And we have to drag the master bus and stereo out tracks outside it. Sometimes it does this. When you move tracks in the upper pane, they jump down to the bottom lane. It is annoying. And then we can right click on this and remove the selected track. What we really want to talk about today is marker tracks, and they are here in the add track dialog. Now today I'm going to create two different marker tracks, and I'll show you the reasons why. I don't think Cubase Elements can have multiple marker tracks, so I'm sorry if you're using that version of the application, but I find this really useful. I'm going to call the first marker track position marker. And I'm going to move it right to the very top of the project. This is always the topmost track in my project. Now I have a special colour for all of these ancillary tracks, and I'm going to select that. What this is going to allow us to do is to create basically bookmarks in our song. So wherever the cursor currently is, you can click this little. There are two buttons next to each other. We've got add marker and add cycle marker. We're just dealing with add markers for the moment. Click that button and it's created this little flag with a number 1. Choose somewhere else in the song. 2 and 3. Now I have shortcut keys set out. You can have up to 9 markers, and I've got shortcut keys on my EK84 for both setting and jumping to markers. I probably wouldn't use position markers if it wasn't for the shortcut keys, so it is an absolutely essential part of the process. And here are all my shortcut keys. Don't forget, I'm just dealing with regular position markers here, and you can see I've got my 9 shortcut keys for setting and recalling. So for instance, if I just jump over and press set marker 6, bang. There's no requirement to have these things in numerical order, so I've just created 1, 2, 3, 6 there. I will show you a way a little bit later how we can rearrange those numbers to have them sequential, but we'll just leave them like that for now. So what we can now do is use those recall functions to jump between those markers, and it's a really easy way to jump around various places in your track. Now, by convention, I've formed the habit of creating marker 3 at the absolute beginning of the audio of each song that I write. So that's just a convention that I've established, that I have marker 3 set up there. It's a throwback to when keys 1 and 2 used to be obscured by my locator functions. So marker 3 was the first usable marker I actually had. But it's just one of those quirks now. I'm completely stuck with it. So all of my songs start with marker 3. It's kind of weird. It does, however, give me the option to create markers before the audio if I want count-ins. So, you know, there is value to it, but that's neither here nor there. Now, every marker in the track, if I zoom in, it's a little bit difficult to see because it's right on the grid line. But if I set marker position 6 there instead, and then move the cursor out of the way, you can see that there's actually a blue line. So every marker has its own line in the project display. We can turn that feature on or off by right-clicking on the marker track itself, and you can see show marker lines. Now it might seem like an unexciting function to basically just create bookmarks in your song, but it is completely wonderful and I use it all the time. So if I'm listening to a piece of music, let's say I'm working on this event here, and I want a tiny little bit of counting, but I don't want to mess with my locators, everything else is fine. I can set the cursor wherever I want, hit a marker, and now marker 7 is set there. So I'm playing the song, I'm listening to it, I decide I want to go back to the beginning and hear it again. Just recall that marker and jump straight there. They are great. Now, of course, all that messing around that we've been doing has completely screwed the sequence of these marker numbers, so they make no intuitive sense to us anymore. That's not a problem. If we head over to the left-hand pane, you can see that markers have their own dedicated window. And rather than trying to interact with them over here, which is super clunky, you can't actually do very much over here because there's such a small window in which to work. I recommend that you just press the E button and then you open this markers window. It's a much better way to work with them. Now, the left-hand pane with these little arrow buttons, if you single click in any of those lanes, it jumps straight to that marker, so that's really convenient. Then you can see the positions, that's all really straightforward. You can actually name your markers. Now, for position markers, I don't generally tend to, but you could. Let's call that one Bob. And now if we want to jump to Bob, let's recall marker number 1, and there we are. In the functions drop down is where we get to reassign those numbers. So if you select reassign position marker IDs, now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 are arranged correctly. So we no longer have markers number 6 and 7, it's reassigned them for us, but it has reassigned them sequentially. So if I now want to jump to marker 4, no problem, that's that done. But we've got two different types of markers. I'm going to make this track bigger, easier for us to see what's going on. And now I'm going to create a cycle marker. So I'm going to press this button which says add cycle marker, and what that's going to do is create basically like a second locator set, a recallable locator set. It actually sets it where the locators currently are. So if I press that button, bang, there we've got cycle marker number 1, completely separate sequential number to our position markers. I don't have shortcut keys set for cycle markers. In fact, I very rarely use them, frankly. They are useful. I've just not got around to really bedding them into my workflow. So now you can see that we've got a way to interact with this cycle marker. If I pick up the black bar and drag it, it moves the entire marker. If I go down to the bottom screen, and this is why I made the track higher so that we can really see the distinction between the cycle bar and the locator points. Because if I pick each of these locator points up, I can reset the size of the cycle marker, the start and end points. Pick it up, drag it over there. Let's move the locators over here and create a second cycle marker. Then I'm going to create a third cycle marker, but this time I'm going to use a slightly different technique. I'm going to press the Control key on my keyboard. It turns the cursor into this funny little pencil with an arrow line, and that draws a cycle marker. If I then double click on cycle marker number 3, it sets the locators to that cycle marker. As I've been preparing for this video, I kind of reminded myself how cool cycle markers actually are, and I do intend to try harder to bake them into my workflow because I do think they're very good. I've just been too lazy getting to grips with them, frankly. If we want to get rid of them, choose our erase tool, and that does it. I'm going to pick cycle marker number 2 up and move it in front of cycle marker number 1, and then I think you can probably guess what I'm going to do here. I'm going to reassign cycle marker IDs, and that flips the order. Now at this point, with all these markers in the song, it's worth noting, if we go down to the transport control and have a look at the buttons that you've probably used many times, but you might not have actually looked at their IntelliSense pop-ups. It says go to previous marker /0, go to next marker /0. So now if I start clicking backwards, you can see that cycle markers have a point at the beginning and end. Position markers are just that, it's just single point markers. And so as we step backwards and forwards through the song, we get to jump to all of these significant points. As far as the transport control is concerned, it doesn't really care about the locators, but it does care about cycle markers. So that's an interesting win that cycle markers have over the primary cycle locators themselves. One final feature of cycle markers just before we move on, if I press the Alt key and double click, it zooms to that cycle marker. And then I'm just holding Control and zooming out as normal. Okay, that's position markers, and they are wonderful. Now I'm going to create a second marker track. And this one I'm going to call info marker. Once again, make sure I've got nothing selected in the project window. Change the color. And now if I make this track, you can't actually see something that's really important here, but you will the moment I make the info marker track twice the height. That orange button indicates the currently active marker track. Don't know how that 01 crept in there. So only one marker track is ever active at any given time. Because we've got all of these set markers and recall marker functions, the application needs to know which track you want to act on. So if I very quickly create some markers in this second line, okay. So what's going to happen now if I recall marker 3? Does it jump there or does it jump here? They're both marker number 3. Well, obviously it's going to jump to the active track. If I click the little tick on the position marker and press recall marker number 3 again, jumps to that marker. So why have I created this second marker? Well, this fella down here has got nothing to do with jumping to positions. In fact, I never used the navigate feature. I very rarely turn this marker track on. It's information only. And what it helps me to do, I've just set my snap on and to grid. And this is where marker descriptions really come into their own. We head into the window. Just realized I was dealing with the info marker track and need to reactivate it again. Let's get back in again. Okay, so these are the markers for the info marker track. And I am going to name marker number 2 verse. And if I just get rid of those two and put this over here, I'm going to call that chorus. And then sort on the ID column. And so that's purely telling me information about the song. What I use information markers for an awful lot is I'll typically have one right at the very beginning of the song that tells me what the key of the song is. So this song's in C major. If it's a complex scale that I don't know all of the notes for, I can type whatever I want in here. It's literally just free text labels. Even though you could activate this track and jump between these things, that's fine. You know, if you want to do that, no problem. But ordinarily, I have the position marker set constantly. That's what I want that thing to do. The position marker is all about jumping around the song. The info marker is telling me information I need to know. Now, sadly, there's nothing we can do to move that activation button. I would really love it to be on the same row as the rest of the information, but unfortunately we can't. Going to track control settings, it doesn't have an option to actually move that activate button, so we're kind of stuck with having to have these tracks contain 2 lanes if you want to see these activation buttons all the time. But actually you'll tend to find more often than not I just shrink them. Just as a final measure, let's clean everything up, make it nice and neat and tidy. Head into each of our tracks, reassign all the markers. For both tracks. And we're all done. Hope you enjoyed the episode today. If you did, please hit the like button, it really helps me out with YouTube and stuff. I'll see you for the next time. Thanks a lot.